All right, we're going to look at some common graphing mistakes. So take a look at the data table and how they scaled their graph. And I want you to think about what did they do wrong. All right, so if we look at the y-axis, what they did was they just took these numbers in the table and they put them here. You can't do that. You have to count by like a number. So you have to skip count by a certain number. Because when we put the numbers in the table in the graph, it's going to look like it's going to form a straight line and that they're consistent. But if we look at what's really happening, we can see that they're not consistent. They keep changing and speeding up and slowing down. But if we just put those numbers from the table on the side of our graph, it's going to look like a perfectly straight line, and it's going to seem like the person was consistent the whole time, and they really weren't. So when we look at this y-axis, we can see that this first box counts by 50, and then this counts by 60, and then they're counting by 50 again. They're not skip counting. They keep changing the scale, and that's not okay. All right, let's look at this graph. So this person looks like they're counting by 50s, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350. That's great. Choosing to count by a number like 50 is a really good choice because everyone knows how to count by 50. It's kind of a standard number to skip count by. But when they labeled that on their graph, you can see that they said right here that one space was 50. And then they changed their mind and they said now 2 spaces is 50. And that's not okay. You have to be consistent. So if you start off saying 1 space is 50, then you have to stay with that and say 1 more space is 50, another space is another 50. You can't say 1 space is 50 and now 2 spaces is 50. So what they could have done instead is they could have said, if this is 50, then right here is 100. Right here would have been 150. This would have been 200. So they would have graphed it like that. Or if they like every 2 is 50, then this would be the 50. This would be the 100. This would be the 150. So notice you just have to stay consistent. All right, another common mistake is doing a really nice job of scaling the graph. So they scaled it by counting by 40s, and then they scaled the other side with 1. But notice these numbers here, are these distance numbers? No, they're time numbers. So they put the correct label here. Distance depends on time. So the label is correct, but then they put time numbers. So these numbers here, again, are not time numbers. They're distance numbers. So the label needs to stay put, but the actual numbers need to switch. All right, and then this is our last graph that we're going to look at a mistake. So they have our time. They're counting by 1s, which is good. And over here, it looks like they're counting by 10s. So they're saying 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then they made a mistake up here. They started counting by 50s. So they were doing a really nice job of counting by 10s. But then they got here and they just decided to switch for some reason to counting by 50s. So remember, it's all about consistency. If you're going to count by 10s, you stay counting by 10s the whole way through. If you decide to change to 50s, you have to erase and start over and count by 50s.